Well, hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. I'm Corny Swiss, and yeah, this is the 1.47 dev server. Very early impressions. It's the first iteration of the dev server, but I drove out a specific machine during my time on the dev server. I didn't try anything else. Didn't have a lot of time, but I saw the dev server was up, so I decided I'll have a go. And honestly, what I'm most excited about, and I'm sure most of you are most excited about, assuming you're into tanks, maybe less so about planes, even though B-29 looks pretty powerful. B-57B looks really powerful, you know, all those 50 cals. But of course the tank I'm talking about is the Mouse, the mighty Mouse. And in 1.47 we will be getting this machine. So I wanted to use this video and this gameplay to kind of illustrate some early impressions. And here's the first thing. The terrain modifications they're making, though, it's actually, I think that was it. I've never seen that before. But how tanks can sort of dig tracks into the ground. I know they always left sort of tracks, but they never became part of the ground. And it looks like on this map, at least, that's the case in sections. And that, I mean, that partly might be because the Mouse is 188 tons, has 200 millimeters of armor basically all over, and with sloping becomes very thick. But I have noticed some issues. I mean, but it is a majestic tank, it's just a giant box. The first thing I'll talk about is the gun, because it's the easiest to talk about. As far as I can tell, it's the exact same gun as the Jagdtiger's gun, which is a very powerful weapon. The coaxial 75mm I've found to be borderline useless. I don't like it. It has all it gets is some heat shells, and the best shell it gets is a heat shell with 100mm penetration. That's just not going to cut it. For the sides of some tanks that might work, or that probably will work, but also the muzzle velocity is just so poor that there's just doesn't seem like there's any real use for it other than harassing fire or trying to keep tanks back from you and things like that. But the 128mm gun is really, really powerful. It's what you get on the Jagdtiger, and it's a good gun on the Jagdtiger. Now, its rate of fire, I think I have a decent crew on mine, and I get it 22.5 seconds per shot, which is pretty good. It's also its upgrading isn't that bad. You have one. I'm using the. This is on the test server, obviously, so I've just went ahead and unlocked the ammunition, and you know it's the same as the Jagdtigers. There's not much more to talk about with that. The armor. The first thing I'm going to talk about with the armor is the turret is sort of the weak point of this tank. The face of the turret is, at range it's pretty good. At close range, T-54s can penetrate fairly reliably because it's not hard to hit the flat spot. And that was a decent little shot in the AI. The front of the turret is kind of an issue. I had a T-54 shoot me to the, would have been nice if I was loaded right there. I would have blasted that guy. I had a T-54 shoot me in this orientation to the left of the gun. Killed my gunner and one of my loaders, I think. I think it was a loader. Didn't knock me out, but he killed a gunner, and it made my life a little more difficult. I've had M103s penetrate the front of the turret fairly consistently. This tank is not invincible, and at close range it is very prone to being circled. Now, that being said, its turret traverse isn't that bad. 16 seconds on this first iteration of the dev server, and you know, it's not bad. The issue is with the hull traverse, and which again isn't bad. The hull traverse isn't bad either. With both those things not being bad but not being good, it means you can get circled by things like T-54s, and if a T-54 gets up alongside you, you're dead. I had a T-54 circle me, and I just could not get him off me, and he just calmly reloaded and put a shell. I think his first shell bounced because I caught it at an angle, and then his second shell went right through my ammo rack. So this thing is not impregnable to the toughest competition you'll see in T-54s. IS-4s, it's actually fairly effective because the IS-4's gun doesn't have the same penetration quality. And if you angle the front of the turret, you're completely safe, it seems, except from the sides. This tank is going to be very vulnerable to being swarmed. Now, in this game, I guess it blew out my gun there. Another thing is that because it has two guns, it's difficult to tell when one gun's damaged and one gun isn't. You're going to have to keep sort of an eye on that. But all in all, as far as I can tell, the front plate of the mouse is very, very tough. The lower part of the hull, which is a weak spot in World of Tanks, is the same if not thicker as the upper plate in War Thunder. So that's not really a weak spot. The way you're going to have to fight this thing is you're going to have to shoot him in the turret face and disable him. Or if you get an APCR round that goes all the way to the back of the turret to try and hit the ammo rack in the back of the turret. Or just flanking it, getting it along the side. This thing is not invincible to M103s for sure. I had an M103 on Ash River penetrate me from about... He was consistently penetrating me at about 700 meters. Just keeping me pinned, setting me on fire. It's just nothing I could really do because he caught me in a bad position because I was angled against some T-54s. But all that being said about the armor, the gun kind of makes up for it. One of the key issues with the Jagdtiger is that it's really slow and it doesn't have a turret. Well, the mouse has a turret, and it turns decently. And you kind of, once you put that quality gun on a turret, life becomes easier. Right? You're going to see a situation here that having a turret is a really, really good thing. However, this tank is dreadfully slow. Just tremendously slow. It does 21 kilometers per hour. I haven't seen this thing get over 20. It's extremely slow. Conquest game mode isn't that bad because there's one cap zone. You just got to make a beeline for it. Also, you can kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but they added heat haze effects for when you fire a shell. And it's actually pretty cool. I like that. But like I was saying, the Conquest and Battle mode are not bad because you're not you don't have to be in multiple places ever. In Domination, I find that this tank is lacking severely, but we kind of expected that because Domination is all about maintaining control of multiple cap zones. And I think, this tank cannot get to multiple cap zones. You will go to one cap zone, and that will be the only cap zone you're allowed to go to for the rest of the game. The advantage of this tank is that once you cap something, this tank can kind of just hold the front line almost indefinitely. If you can keep the enemy back, like let's say it's a domination game on Kursk, if you capture B and the enemy aren't in the field, you can sit there for eternity and be safe. Now T-40, I have an M46 with me, which is very nice. And he took out the T-44, so I return the favor and knock out the Tiger II. And of course, because Allied air support is always looking out for your best interests. Wait for it. Yeah. Allied AI bomber has knocked out my teammate and blown off both my tracks. So I'm going to have to sit here and repair for a minute and a half. But, all this being said, I think the Mouse is a very strong tank. This is a tank that certainly deserves an 8.0 battle rating, and that is what it's going to get. Its only real threat, in my opinion, is T-54s, and T-54s are 8.0, and it has to be an 8.0. I think once we I think if you had a mix of Tiger IIs with a Mouse, maybe a Ferdinand or two, maybe a Yak Tiger, he'd have an extremely potent team. And I'm kind of glad that Gaijin are adding tanks like the Mouse, because it's going to make the upper tiers just way more competitive. I mean, the T-54 is still really strong, and they added another variant, the T-54 1949. However, the Mouse has the tools to deal with them. It just, you cannot get flanked. If a T-54 surprises you, it's very unlikely you'll survive the encounter, right? Because he has enough tools to beat you at close range. At long range, I don't think a T-54 stands anywhere near a chance. Matter of fact, I don't think there's really a tank in the game that stands a chance against the Mouse at really long range, because to penetrate, you have to hit a very specific portion of the turret. Now, the Mouse does have what appears to be a large shot trap at the bottom of the turret, but I'm not convinced, for example, a heat shell from an M103. I'm not convinced that'll do the job, because heat shells don't like sloped surfaces, and I'm pretty sure a heat shell doesn't really ricochet. It kind of hits something and then, you know, kind of uses all that chemical energy on the target. Also, that's just mean, that Panther. Ouch. I mean, there were only 2 players on each team, but it was a fun game, and this was actually the first game I played the Mouse, and in my opinion, it'll be a very strong tank. Obviously, when it's in public on the normal servers, I'll make a full review of it. But for now, let it be known, I think this is a really powerful tank. It's not, I don't think it's overpowered, because I have been beaten in it, but it's not insanely underpowered either. It's kind of where it needs to be as a tank, and it faces reasonable competition that it still has great armor against, but is not so brokenly overpowered against. You know, I think it's straddling a fine line, and I think it'll be okay. But it should hopefully tip the balance more towards the Germans in rank 5. Anyway, thanks for watching. I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.